Hello and welcome, developers. My name is Shay, and this is another episode of Shay Develops. As a matter of fact, it is the final episode in this series where we learn how to build a website from scratch entirely from the ground up using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Now, if you watch the previous, that's what, 4 videos now, you should have an understanding on the 3 languages that we're going to be using. If as far as like what they do, you probably don't know all the tags in HTML. You definitely don't know all the selectors in CSS, or well, I'm not saying that you definitely don't. I'm sure there's people out there that maybe they do, but and all the JavaScript nuances that are out there. There's a whole bunch more to learn. So just because you've went through this doesn't mean that you're a total expert. There's a lot of hands-on education that you need to keep going through. So being a self-taught developer, that the learning's always going to be happening. It never stops. But this is the fundamentals. This is the foundation to the rest of your web development career path, right? Understanding the fact that HTML is a structural language used to help support the content, the content in my site, and allow and create basically a DOM that can then be used by some other technologies like CSS and JavaScript and whatever to give us even more. What's the word? Really, just more of a site that we can build by the knowledge that we continue to keep learning and the education or self-education, really, that you have to keep going, build that discipline. All right, so enough rambling. Some stuff that maybe didn't even make sense, but like I said, this is the last video. We're going to be going starting from scratch. We're going to be doing HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and we're going to build a fully functioning site. It'll probably just be a couple of pages, contact page. We'll definitely have a form, and we may take that form data and then output it to some kind of file, so at least you have it, right? Like, okay, if I can create this file, then later on I can take this data and put it into a database or whatever the case may be, right? But for now, we see that we have this old stuff up from earlier. I don't want it anymore, so I'm gonna just hit X out of this and right click on Morty's nose, and I'm gonna do a new folder, and I'm gonna select, I'm just gonna call it Scratch, or yeah, is that how you spell scratch? I don't know, it looks so wrong. SCRATCH, yeah. We're gonna call it Scratched for Scratch Education, for building a website from scratch. I know that's really dumb, but I like it. All right, so we're gonna right click it, and we should be able to open up with code. If you have Visual Studio Code and you set that in your path, and we can right click now and do a new file, and we're gonna call this index.html. Now, the reason we call this index.html is because a lot of times whenever you're hosting these sites, that is the main page that these hosting platforms are looking for, saying, hey, this is my homepage for my project. And that's just kind of been how the standard has been over the years. So you want to keep with that anywhere that you really can. So we have our index.html page. Now we're going to use Emmet, like we talked about earlier. If you're not familiar with Emmet, I have a video on that. Check it out. Basically, just a way to really write some code pretty fast. What is that Emmet abbreviation? Oh, wow. Okay, that's silly. Yeah, why? Okay. 1 is better than 3. I don't understand why that was like that. All right, so we have our head tag that we talked about in the HTML video. This is just the meta information about our website. You know, the information about the information that we're passing along, whatever. So we're going to call this Scratch ED. Yeah, home. You know what? Never mind. We'll just call it Scratch ED. All right, and then we'll create a. I want a div tag that's going to wrap my entire page so that I can manipulate the width of all of my content at once, at least as like a max width, like, hey, I don't want you to get bigger or smaller than this. And that's one way to do that. You could block it out as well, which I may do that as potentially. Just kind of thinking about how I want this, and I think I want it to be, because you really want to design for mobile first, right? So we're going to have a navigation across the top, and then we're going to have a big hero section. So this will be nav section. What did I do that for? And then we'll call this hero section. What did I do? I didn't even know that was a keyboard shortcut. Cool. All right. I'm messing. There we go. Hero section. And then we'll have our content section. And maybe our footer section. And by the way, these are comments. If you're not familiar with HTML comment, they don't get shown to the end user, so it just helps you keep track of where stuff is. You can like just quickly see it as a glance as you're scrolling through, because as you write and as your sites get more and more complex, things get crazy and just can grow out of control. So it's nice to have comments that kind of step you through what you're doing, right? So we have this nav section. I kind of think I can just get away with using a container for each section. So I'll have a div dot nav container, and we'll have nav and then we have our different anchor tags. So this will be we'll have a contact page. We'll have a could have like an FAQ page, so I can get a little bit more into the JavaScript. We don't actually have like a real FAQ, but you get the understanding by what we do. So we'll have that. We'll have contact, we'll have FAQ, and then we're just gonna leave it at that. Maybe we'll have, you know what? No, we'll have one more. It'll be about. And that'll be it for now. Okay. So then we're going to have this hero section. So we're going to do div dot and this is Emmet, by the way, I'm using this. If not, you'd have to write out div, class, and all this other stuff. So by using div dot, the dot is the representation of class. If I was to use the hashtag, that it's the representation of ID within HTML. Okay, so it's div dot, we'll do hero container. And within our hero container, I want an image background, and then I also want some text and some other stuff in there. So the image background I'll do within the hero container itself, and then I want a text container in which that I'll store my H1 I'm kind of debating on what text I really want to put. It really doesn't matter, so I just wanted it to be kind of interesting looking, right? The theme is we're building a website from scratch, and I'm calling it Scratch to Education. You know. All right. So with here though, I want to do a div. Div dot. What do I want to call it? Logo container. And here we'll use image. It'll just be called logo. You know what? We're not even going to use a logo because we can actually use we'll make this an H2, and it'll say something entirely different that I'm not sure yet. So leave that right there. Then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put a span here with a class of, let's say, orange. Everybody, do you want to hop back up here? Come on, hop back up with the chair. All right, and take that. What do you? Whatever. All right, so now we have scratched, and then we're going to change the color of this ED at some point. And then within our text container here, we're going to have just a paragraph of some stuff. Actually, you know what? I can just do like a lorem. Yeah, it's like lorem, like one paragraph. Is what I just did. And I think that's also Emmet. And I may not even want to have that whole paragraph there. So I don't even know how do you make a lorem heading? I'm gonna Google that real quick. Emmet lorem heading. I guess we just have to make our own headings. All right. There we go. Some not shameful at all self-promotion within the website that we're building, which is, you know, whatever. It's all right. No big deal. Then we're going to have a div dot, let's see here. What is this? Content section? Content section, and then again div dot text contain. We may be able to get away with keeping these the same. Maybe we'll see. We may have to come back and change these class names, but for now, I think we're good. And we could actually, instead of this being a div, we could actually call this a section. Let's see here. What is an HTML section? Because you want to start thinking semantically as far as like what is the meaning of the content that we're creating. That's why we use this nav tag up here to say, hey, this is the navigation of our site, and these are the links. So we go here to W3 Schools. W3 Schools, great resource, and it's how to use it, but we really want to know the semantic meaning of, and we could also use main for some main content. Yeah, let's go to main. Let's see what that, yeah, specify the main content of your document. So within this text container within here, we could actually let's see, hero section, never mind, this is the content section. So within the content section, we could put a main, but what's the content that you're trying to put on your home page? I could see doing it on your About Us page or an FAQ, or there's got to be some real reasoning in order for you to want to use it, right? You can't just use it because we may not have just a main thing, because home pages can jump around from one aspect of their business to another on that home page, just based off of what people are coming there for. So maybe we don't use main instead. So let's go back to section. Yeah, it's just a section in a document. I think that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to use a section here. And then within this section, we will have an H2, maybe an H3. We'll see. Content section, stand-in heading. I like that. All right. And then, you know what? Instead, I'm just going to copy this because we cleaned it up already. You know what? I'm going to give it another, and I'm going to use a line break in between. Okay. So hopefully you guys have been following along. We have our divs, and these are helping create structure within our document that we're going to use to attach our CSS to allow us to position things better. And you'll understand that once we get into our CSS section that we will be very shortly. So hopefully you guys are sticking around. We're only 20 minutes in so far. Jeez, and this is the final. So this probably will be about an hour and 20 minutes or longer of a video. But there's going to be a lot of good information, so hopefully you guys are sticking around. Watch it in sections if you have to. Okay, so back to our wonderful content page here that we haven't even loaded up. So this is not it, by the way. So I'm going to go ahead and erase that. We are going to, all this stuff is saved. Let's go ahead and build in our footer page, or our footer real quick. So we have a footer, and we're going to say, div dot copyright. And with HTML, you can use a few different ways to write like symbols. And one of those ways is with the ampersand, and then well, this one you can use copy. Sometimes you can use just words, but sometimes you have to use a set of characters that you'll have to Google on the internet to figure out what those are. That allows you to write specific like little symbols and stuff. So right now I can use @copy, or not @copy, but ampersand copy actually. I want to make sure I keep that span in there, right? Because that's the cool part where you change the color to orange. And then, oh no, space 2021. All right. So that's our index page. That's how we're going to leave it. I don't think we're going to go anywhere further into this. Like I said, it's already 21 minutes. All right, so let's take a look and see what it looks like. So if we right click, we should be able to, where's live server? Live server running? Yeah, it's running. But I forgot, how does it, oh no. You know what? It's gonna, yeah, nope, didn't run, okay. And this is live coding, ladies and gentlemen. Sometimes you just run into issues that you're like, this is so easy, but why am I drawing a blank? And that's exactly what's going on right now. So give me a minute while I figure out. I could easily just like, open, oh my god. Anyway, welcome to the live server. Okay, so let's continue on. We have our index page. Let's create, we said we wanted a contact, an about, and an FAQ. So we're going to do new file. We're going to do about.html. New file, contact.html. New file, FAQ.html. Now for starters, let's go with just copying the index page, and I'm going to throw it on each and every one of these, so that way /about, /contact, /FAQ, these should work. Cannot, what do you mean? Oh, that's right, because it doesn't say .html. Never mind. Used to coding in other languages so much, used to coding in other platforms so much that, you know, this isn't always. There we go. Nope, come on. Oh, that's right. And now it's not updated across all the other pages. So Control A, Control C. Let's just do it all over one more time. I know this is why this kind of seems tedious at this level if you've never coded like this. And I'm really just going, I literally just Control A and then Control C to highlight all the content, copy all the content, and then went across all the pages and just pasted it all, because so far we really don't have much that differentiates one page from the next, so it's fine. Okay, so now we can continue our development process by filling out the content within these pages, right? I don't really care about the CSS just yet. I want some content, and then we'll come in and we'll fill it out. We'll make it look good. All right. So the about page, let's see here. Content section. We'll actually change this from section to main, because this is going to be the main area. We'll keep this hero section. I don't know exactly if we're going to keep it forever or not. But anyway, this will be what is this? Oh yeah, about. About the Scratch education. All right. All right, I think that's enough for the about. And then we're going to do contact. Contact, we're actually going to do, this will be main as well, because what we're going to do is the main section is going to be the form that we're about to implement here. Form, it'll be a post. Yeah, absolutely. The action is just going to go to submit, probably .js. And we see here, label. We're just going to get a name and email. So we'll do label for name. Input, text, ID, name. And we talked about creating a form on one of the sections. I think it was the JavaScript section. So if you want to go back and look over that, we talked about creating a form, some of the HTML, and some of the stuff that goes on into building a form. But so if you're not super familiar with what I'm going, just go back and take a look at that real quick, or follow along, Google it. It's real simple stuff right here. All right, so we have this label, input, text, whatever that, and we're gonna do another one, but this time we're gonna call it email. Be of type email, ID email, and name email. And then one last thing, we'll need a submit button. So button submit. Contact. Or I'll just call it submit. It doesn't have to be called submit. You can call it whatever you want to. There's our form. Pretty simple. And then we have an FAQ section. Now the FAQ section is going to be a little bit more complicated. So in order to do this, we're going to have like titles, and then we're going to have some JavaScript that's involved and some other stuff. So let us continue that. So without, so let's go ahead and see how we're going to build that out. This should be actually pretty easy. We're going to put everything in a div. We'll call this div. Call it div. Oh, I'm drawing a blank here. Like some kind of FAQ container. There we go. Jeez, that was painful. FAQ container. I'm sure it's painful to watch. Whatever, it doesn't matter. So FAQ container, and we'll do div.faq heading. What is going on? Do I have my divs messed up somewhere? No? Okay. Huh. Weird. Alright, get rid of that. FAQ heading, div.faq answer. And then we can do copy and paste, and we'll give I think I'm going to make this an ID, and you'll see why later whenever we're writing the JavaScript. Hopefully it'll let me connect these a little easier. So if I do FAQ2, you know what, why not write it out all the way big time, give it FAQ3. All right, cool. Now, whenever you have an ID in your HTML code, you can only have that ID specified one time. If you have the same ID multiple times throughout your page, it'll probably still load and still work, but if you got some JavaScript or CSS or something that's supposed to be attached to that specific ID, it might start doing some wonky things. So really you want to keep it to that ID is stuck to that element, unless you obviously want to erase it or whatever. Okay, so that's all looking good, and we should be able to now go from about to contact to FAQ. And yeah, while that looks terrible, that's functioning just as we wanted to and as intended. So only 33 minutes in, we've got 4 pages built out, and we're looking pretty good. So let's create a new folder. We're going to call it CSS, and we're going to put in a new file called styles.css. And we need to link to this style sheet. So in order to do that, we'll go up here within our head tag, and we'll do link, and it's just CSS. And it's called styles.css, not just styles. All right. And I'm going to close all of these pages. So the first thing we want to do is zero out our content. And we also want to be thinking, whenever we're building this page, we want to be thinking about mobile first, because so many people are using their phone to view our websites and stuff. So regardless, mobile first. So the first thing we want to do is zero out our margin and padding, because the browsers that display our code to the user sometimes put their own CSS code on top of it. It's not like a whole lie. It's just like, you know, a margin here, padding here, which can definitely throw off the look at the site. So the first thing we want to do is zero out some of these things, and that's margin and padding. So we want to do body, or really we want to do asterisk, which is a wildcard that says every tag I want the margin and padding zeroed out. That's awesome so far. All right, and we're linked to it, and then also we want to comment. We want to make sure this works. So let's give ourselves a our body a background color of just this aqua color, and this should work on the home page. Unable to open styles. Oh, that's because I haven't told it to go into this. This is a good learning point right here. I told it to go to the styles.css page or CSS file that we've got, but it's not doing that. And the reason is because it's inside this other directory, CSS, the CSS directory. So we have to go into the CSS directory and then go into these styles. So since I'm on, whenever you're thinking about going into another directory from a file, you want to think about where that file is located within your document hierarchy, right? So right here, we're on the top. And the CSS folder that we need to go into is also on the top with us. So it's easy to go from the top into the top. We just say, hey, we want to go into your CSS/styles.css, please. And then we're going to save that. And then now if you look to the right side, boom, we got that nice aqua color that we were looking for earlier. So that's just how that would, how you would want to think about accessing other files within your HTML code. So if the styles was just directly within the same thing, like if I pull this out here and I move it, sure, yeah, I want to move it, it doesn't work anymore. But if I get rid of this, save it, boom, we're back to working again. And you see how all that code, or how everything got all scrunched up? That was because we were removing the margin and padding that was presented to it through our web browser here. So I don't want it to be outside of that though. So I'm going to put it back in there, and we're going to undo that, save it, and that's looking real good. All right, so let's continue. What do we want to do next? Well, first we want to work on this navigation. Right now, it's not looking so hot, right? So we have this nav container, and we have our navigation. So our nav container, let's go in here and start. We'll do navigation. You know, that's just that. Go to that body right there. You know, that's just using good comments to follow along later. All right, so we got navigation. So just what, nav container. So dot nav container, is that it? Yeah, nav container for our class. We want to specify that to be width of 100%. And we could say something like display flex, and then display these inner HTML tags flexed within it in certain ways. However, I don't really want to do that. Instead, I want to change the display type of the div and the nav. So if we go into our HTML page right over here and we right click and we inspect, we can take a look at our HTML pages and take a look at our HTML, our CSS, and see what we have. So, excuse me. If we look at the nav container here, so it says it's 100%, and then we have our logo container, and then we have our nav here. we have our nav, which is, if we come down here, it's automatically being given this display block attribute, and nothing we can do about that. I mean, there's definitely something we can do about it, but it's automatically going to happen. We can just change it later, so it's not. And the same thing happens with the nav block. So with the display block, that means it wants to take up all the section on this block of pixels, which is usually like the whole row that we have. So if we highlight it, you can see that blue bar where it says nav, it goes all the way across, and that means it wants to take up the full section. So if we instead change the nav to be like display inline, instead, see, it no longer wants to be displayed in block, and now will be displayed in line. But the reason it's not displaying in line with anything else is because everything else is displayed block. So in order for that to work, let's go back to this logo container, and we have this display block. So we can also do display inline. Oh, and the H1 is also display block. So we'll have to display inline. We could also do inline block, which is the best of both worlds. So if it's got enough space, it'll take up the whole thing. But if it doesn't have enough space to share, it'll take up the whole space. But if it has enough space to share, then it will make space for the next element in line or previous or whatever the case may be. So that's how we can start to manipulate our divs to line up our text and stuff without having to do some kind of weird funky things with positioning and whatever, and trying to like overlap those divs. It's quite easy with just a simple display change. At least at this point in time, where nothing's too complex here. But that's also the good thing. You want to keep it as minimal as possible, because it really helps the code bloat. It really helps the coming in and making updates and changes later. There's a lot to keeping things simple versus trying to make it super complicated so you're the only one that really understands it, right? Like there's no reason for that, really. Okay, so we've kind of working on our navigation here. We can, and so far we've just been making changes on this right side, but we need to actually be making the changes to our styles.css. So what can we do? Well, we can go ahead and go to our nav container, and we want to make sure that we didn't add anything here. But we do have our logo container. So what we're going to do with our logo container, dot logo container. No, stop it. There we go. Is we want to set it to display, and I'm going to use inline block. Or actually, instead of doing it like this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a I'm going to call this kind of like my framework section. And if I want to change something to display block, I'll create a class called display with a capital B, and that'll be display block. We'll call it display IB. Will be display inline block, and then now I can use that wherever I want to within my CSS classes to put that, so I don't then have to go and figure out, okay, well, I need display block in this one and this one and this one. I can just kind of do it on the fly as I go about, because I know that I have access to that CSS class that'll do it for me. So I'll save it. Nothing's really changed at the moment, but if I come over here, so we refresh this, and now we set ourselves back on the bottom. But if I come here and change our classes to what was it? Display display inline block. And I also want to do that to this nav here. Now that lines up the way I want it to on this right side, but I don't want my text to be all squished up on this side. I want it to be over here, and I want scratch to be over there. So how do I update that, and how do I change that? Well, we can do that with positioning. So we can do our nav. We can use, if we want to select within CSS, like see if we use the dot here, that means, hey, we want to select the class. If we don't have a dot or anything indicating before it to say that it's not a class or it's not a ID, it means that we're actually selecting the element itself, and we could be selecting all of the elements on that page, or if you just have one nav, then you're selecting that one element. So we just have the one nav. So we're going to do nav, and we want to position relative. Yeah, because we want to position relative to where we are currently within the DOM, and we just want to go over to the side. So we could do right 0, I think. I want to save that. That did not do what I thought it wanted to do. So let's inspect. Let's go to nav here. We said right 0. What if we did left 0? Or what if that's just not how you do it at all with this position? And absolute, definitely not. No, thank you. Absolute is more like you're positioning things on top of everything else. It just kind of stays at the pixel location that you set it regardless. So if I say position absolute and then if I could scroll, this would stay right there. So we don't want it to do that. So definitely not position absolute. Fix it here, relative. I do want position absolute, but first, in order to position absolute something the way that you want it to, you need to go back up here to logo, or actually nav container, and I need to set that to be position relative. Now, I don't entirely remember why this works. I'm sure you'll be able to Google it and figure it out. But yeah, so if you want to position something absolutely, like within another like div, you can totally do that. And instead of it being on top of everything, it's now just going to be within that div and position absolutely within that div. So I just want to throw it all to the right. So by doing so, I have this, like I said, with 100% position relative, and then come back in here, and then now I can do this position absolute. Yeah, so if I put left 0, yeah, it's gonna, but instead I can do right 0, and then as I move, that's just gonna stay right there because I positioned it right all the way 0. But I could make that more like right 20 pixels, and then top 20 pixels. It's actually, I think that's too many. Maybe like 12 pixels. I feel like that's a little better. And now we've got a better positioned, mobile even, kind of mobile, like mobile enough that that you can read and use. So if I click on this, boom. But because I haven't added the CSS to, or even updated the HTML even to the other pages, this is actually working quite as intended. Oh, but then I just lost all my changes, but it's not a big deal. So we're going to do, this is going to be position absolute. And it's going to be right, what was it, 20 pixels and top 12 pixels. But first, we need to position our nav container to have a relative position. And then once we save that, boom, working pretty much like we want. All right. For now. And there's a bunch of other ways you could have went and done this. We could have used Flexbox. We could have grid, some other stuff. But I just sometimes just prefer to use this, this positioning. We'll build some more stuff with Flexbox later. But for right now, this is how it goes. Or this is how, decided to build it in a way that's definitely going to work and going to keep going. So we have this, everything's already scrunched up to the side. So let's push over this heading just a little bit. So we have this nav container. We want to give it some padding. Let's do all sides like 10 pixels. We'll save that. And now that's actually jacked up our positioning, which is fine. We'll just need to go in here and change it. So it looks like right 40 and top 18 look to be pretty good. So we'll go ahead and change that. Top 40, right 18 pixels, looking pretty decent. Now I said I wanted to have this be orange. Color, no, not counter reset. Color. We'll do orange red. Save that. Boom. Looking good. All right. We have to, I don't like necessarily the font of the logo, but everything else is fine. So let's continue on building our site real fast because we're already 52 minutes in. Hopefully you guys are sticking around. We have a bit of work to do still. Now we're continuing on this index.html page. We kind of have our navigation going, sort of. I want to do some more structural stuff before we do any more styling into our page. So we have our we did the nav container. Now we have our hero container. We definitely want to add some padding to our hero container. I'm going to call this hero. We'll just call it hero. Hero container. We're going to have that padding. What is it, 10 pixels, right? Yeah. And we're going to grab an image to use as our background for this hero section, which is what people do a lot. So a good place to go to find an image is Unsplash, I think. Yeah, free stock photos, Unsplash. Here we go. And we can find one that's, I don't know, I'll call it Scratch. And I don't not quite what I was looking for. Let's Let's do development. Here we go. Oh, this is a nice one. I like this because it's Git and pretty. This is Git, which is version control. What this image is right here on this right side. And we'll talk about version control in another video, but it's really awesome stuff to help you keep track of different versions of the site. And if you break something, you can revert, and yeah, a lot of good functionality with it. So we're going to use that. I'm going to download for free, and I'm going to right click, show in folder. I brought it where you can't see it, but I'm going to drag it into my project here, and I'm actually going to right click not new file, but new folder, and I'm going to call it img for images. Drop that into our images. Yes, please move. And I'm going to rename it because it's way too long. We're just going to call it hero background.jpg. And then, so for our hero container, we're going to do background. And we could do background image, but we're just going to do background URL. And we're going to specify that we want to go from this CSS file that we're currently in. We're going to leave it and then go into the image directory and then grab that hero background.jpg. So remember I was talking about this earlier. So in order to leave the directory, the CSS directory that we're in, we're going to use the // notation. And you'll see that we're already being helped out by Visual Studio Code, saying, hey, okay, you're out of the directory that you want to be in. Do you want to go back into the CSS directory? You can do that if you like. You can go in and out and in and out and in and out, but it makes no sense to do that. But where would you like to go to next? Well, I want to go into the image directory, and then I want that hero.background.jpg. Thank you very much. Now I save that. And now it is there, but it is looking pretty terrible, right? Like that looks nothing like what I was expecting. Well, there's ways to fix that for sure, absolutely. So we'll inspect it, and we got that hero container with our background, with that URL. So the other thing I might want to do is like color white to specify that I can actually even read what's going to be happening next, or the text that's in here. Now with that, I can do, see here, background, position. We can position the X and Y. So we should actually say background repeat, no repeat, to make sure the background's not repeating across our X and Y axis. And X and Y axis, you can think of that just like an X and Y axis on any graph or anything that you've ever messed with before. So we'll do background, position, probably do something like center, but that's not really the big problem. The big problem is just way too big, right? So let's do background size, and from there we can do cover, inherit, revert. I like cover. We'll do cover, but there's one more thing I want, because I don't want the text to be so readable on the background, because it kind of disrupts the text here. So I want to kind of overlay another color on top of our background. I can do that with a comma and do RGBA, and I can do, I have to put it in parentheses, I don't think so. I can do 0, 0, 0, 0.5, and maybe I'll go up a little from there. Open color picker. Oh, I don't think I did this right. Let's see here. We'll do We'll Google it. So background image with color overlay. There we go. All right. So where is copy? Okay. Oh, I broke it. I didn't like whatever I just did. Invalid property value. What's wrong with it? RGBA, red, green, blue, and then your alpha, which is your opacity, whether or not you want how much of the color to show through or how much of the background to show through, you know, that whatever. So we said 0.25, which is not a whole lot, but we're getting an actual failure here. But if we remove the RGBA, it works just fine. But then maybe we do background color. And we do RGBA 0.0,0,0,01. Oh, I don't really think that's working, right? Oh, it also didn't mess up the background size to cover. So we have background size, cover, not contain, cover. This is not doing what I expected it to. This below. Yeah, okay. That makes sense. All right. So maybe if I do background color RGBA 0.0,0,0.5. Not one. Warning, oh, okay. Warning, this doesn't work. I'm a moron. Oh my goodness. Linear gradient, though, is the way to go, apparently. So we can just grab this linear gradient. And we can do background, linear gradient, remove that color part. I don't want this to be red. I said I want to do more black. And that is looking good. And then the color white, please, for our text. Nice. Let's actually do this and make this a solid 0.5. Yeah, no, I like it. We do need to do some stuff as far as with our font and whatnot. It's kind of terrible, but the rest of the site is actually starting to look up and to actually make something of itself. So not too bad at the moment, if I do say so myself. All right. I don't know what I said about an hour and 20 minutes of this. That's what this is taking. But I may break this up into 2 sections because I could honestly use a little bit of a stretch myself. So if you've gotten this far nonstop, way to go. Congratulations. But don't stop. Keep going after you get up. Take a break. I'm going to come back and keep going and keep recording this video, and then upload both of these roughly at the same time so you have access to it so you can keep going once you get to that point. But if you like what you've heard so far, like, comment, subscribe, share with your friends. I really appreciate it. Trying to build something here, and I want to help people and build this out, this community in several ways. But for now, like I said, I just want people here. If they got problems with their development or whatever, they're trying to find a job, whatever the case may be, maybe I can help them do whatever it is with my expertise. Anyway, until the next video, you guys, take care. Y'all are awesome. Peace.